Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host Sean, here with another episode. Before we start, I want to mention our sponsors. First is the Rockford Ice Hogs. Next home game, Friday, March 6th versus Oklahoma City at 7 p.m. The Ice Hogs complete their season series with the Barons as Oklahoma City returns to the BMO for Rockford Hockey Club night. Rockford will be recognizing the youth hockey community by wearing specialty Rockford Ice Hog Club sweaters during the game. Only 90 minutes from city limits and fun for the whole family. Get tickets and more at icehogs.com. Also, the show is brought to you by audible.com. If you head over to audible.com/Swerski Sports, that's SWERSKI Sports, you'll get to download one free audiobook of your choice. Some choices are Tales from the Chicago Blackhawks Locker Room, a collection of the greatest Blackhawks stories ever told. Stories from the original years all the way to the 2010 Stanley Cup run. If the NFL is more your speed, there's Monsters, the 1985 Chicago Bears and the Wild Heart of Football, documenting the 1985 Bears Super Bowl run. Or the amazing Michael Jordan, The Life, the absolute end-all be-all of Michael Jordan biographies and one of the greatest biographies of all time. Check out one of these titles or any of another 100,000 books for free by going to audible.com/Swerski Sports. That's audible.com/SWERSKI Sports. So I guess the big thing is I want to mention is pitchers and catchers are reporting. That's right, pitchers and catchers are reporting. That means spring and baseball are on their way. Have to love this time of year. You've got Cubs and Sox still in first place, baseball starting, hockey playoffs are right around the corner, and the NFL draft is almost here. And you can start to feel the warm weather every so often break through the bitter cold. So, I want to start this week because we didn't do anything but the draft last week with, I guess we'll start with Blackhawks. So last time we talked is the Blackhawks had an 8-game home string coming up. And in theory, 8-game home stretch should be really good. You should be able to pad your lead. You should be able to maybe even catch up to teams ahead of you because you should play well at home. Especially when you're a team like the Blackhawks that has Stanley Cup aspirations, is you should be able to play well at home. But that's just not the case. So far, they've got one game left in this homestand, and they're only 2-2-3, including the last two games were complete blowouts and a disheartening loss to the Detroit Red Wings. These back-to-back blowouts were from teams that were struggling as well. You had struggling Colorado, who's probably not going to make the playoffs, and the struggling Boston Bruins, who had lost 6 in a row going into that game. And as I told my wife after the game, I said, guarantee that they're going to bring Scott Darling up, and there's going to be some roster changes. And true enough, so far, as the time of recording, it's Antti Raanta was sent down to Rockford, Ryan Hartman was sent down to Rockford, and they brought up Scott Darling and Joakim Nordstrom. So I would fully expect that the way Crawford and Raanta played this last few weeks, it's that Darling is going to get the next start. And if nothing else, it's to let Corey Crawford refocus, because Scott Darling has been lights out in Rockford, playing really well. So just give him time because he's clearly frustrated and he's not mentally focused and mentally there and playing at the top of his game. I mean, just look at that that soft goal that he left, that fourth one against Colorado, where the puck just trickled in because he didn't turn his stick all the way. That's just lack of focus. It's just frustration, and that sums up this team. Is they're playing like a desperate team. They're playing undisciplined hockey, and they're playing frustrated. I mean, they're getting a lot of shots on goal, but they're not getting a lot of good shots. I mean, so like that go to the net tactic that they always talk about, that was just completely not noticeable. It's been the mantra that the Blackhawks have had for several weeks now, and I mean they always want to go to the net, but it's been something that they've been focusing on, talking to the media, that they got to get to the net, and it just hasn't been happening with good success. Coach Q was quoted as saying, "We got a lot of shots blocked last night, but I don't think we had enough net pressure or presence. We may have been waiting for someone to get there, and then the shot would evaporate. If you want to score in this league, you have to go to the hard areas. You have to go to the net and pay the price in there. If you take away the goalie sight lines, you get second opportunities. You have to get some greasy goals." And that's really true. Is the Blackhawks have been getting a lot of shots, but they've been a lot of shots with clear sight lines on the goalie. They're not a lot of high percentage shots. They're not getting rebound shots. They're not getting second chance shots. They're not getting good net front presence, and it's showing because they're not scoring. It's a frustrating position to be in, and you couple that. I mean, there's always times that there's ebb and flow of these things during the seasons. The offense will be up, the offense will be down. The defense will be up, defense will be down. Goaltending will be up, goaltending will be down. And this is the first time that I can remember where all three phases are in a downswing at the same time. Is the offense isn't scoring, the defense is just not playing well at all, and the goaltending is shoddy at this point. So it's a recipe for disaster for the Blackhawks. And there's been a ton of inconsistencies in the offense. In their past 7 games, including the final 2 games of, I mean, this is from a few days ago, is including the 2 games of their ice trip show, the Blackhawks have scored 19 goals in 7 games. That's 2.71 goals per game. And the individual breakdown has been super top 2 line heavy. Of those 19, 7 goals for Marian Hossa, 3 for Brandon Saad, 3 for Christopher Stieg, 2 for Patrick Kane. And then Taves, Bickle, Kruger, and Hjalmarsson each have 1. So where's your third and fourth line production? I mean, that's just really pathetic. You can't sustain a long drive in the playoffs if you only have 1 line scoring or 2 lines scoring. The Blackhawks have always thrived going in the playoffs by being able to roll out 4 lines, give everybody a little break, keep the pressure on the other team. And this season, between injuries, suspensions, inconsistent play, they haven't been able to do that. And I don't know what it is that they need to spark this. And I think that they're trying to bring up players to hopefully spark those third and fourth lines, but it just hasn't worked. And part of the problem is Bickle. Bickle just hasn't been playing well. You haven't been getting a lot of production from a lot of guys in those lines, and it's evident. And part of it also is the offense is not playing well because of the defensemen not playing well. You've got Quenneville switching up lines left and right because Seabrook will make some amazing plays and then just have a complete bonehead game. Oduya is not the same Oduya. I mean, he just got hurt and he's got upper body injury. He's going to be out for a few games. But you've got Roosevelt is not playing well. You've got, since the injury to Van Riemsdyk, you've been in influx this whole time. You've got that last defensive pairing has been ups and downs. That putting Eriksson in there after a really bad run of David Rundblatt time, and you're giving your defensemen extra minutes, extra responsibilities, splitting them up from their pairings, and that's just, I don't know. That's just not the way to go. I don't think. I mean, I love Quenneville and his line shifts on the with the forwards and centers. They usually yield results, but his defensive pairing switching is just not working. You've got guys that are just comfortable with other guys. They're signal calling, the way that they know how each other plays, and that's really where you get the best productivity. And if you have guys that aren't always used to each other, I mean, sure, they've been playing with each other for years, but in the thick of things, in the heat of the moment, is you want a guy that you're used to playing with, and that's not what's happening right now. And with Oduya hurt, who knows what these defense pairings are going to do. Quenneville said the other day that Van Riemsdyk was very close to being cleared for contact, but the thing is with a knee injury is you can't keep in shape. It's not like if you have a shoulder injury where you can keep running or doing other things to keep your cardio shape. When you got a knee, there's really nothing you can do. You're not in shape. So even if he's cleared for contact and some light skating, he's going to have to get back into shape and be ready to play, and that's going to take a little bit. Plus, you never know how that wheel's going to feel. A hurt knee is really scary for players. Look at Derek Rose. He's still not mentally back, and it's been a year and a half since his injury. And then again, going back to the Blackhawks, is the absolute frustration that they're experiencing. A case in point against Colorado is when Sharp and Hjalmarsson were whistled for penalties at the same exact time. So leaving Colorado with 2 minutes of a 5-on-3 is, all right, you give up one goal on a 5-on-3 with 2 minutes. That's understandable. That's, you sort of you don't want to expect it, but you sort of expect it. 5-on-3 for 2 minutes is really hard to do, even for a bad power play team like Colorado. But then once you give up that other goal, you have a 5-on-4. You're the best, statistically the best penalty killing team in the league, and Colorado is one of the worst power play units in the league. You cannot give up that second goal. You just can't have it. Jonathan Toews was quoted after the Colorado game that giving up one goal is one thing. We have to get the kill on the 5-on-4, and we weren't even close to doing that. If we maintain that one goal deficit in the third, we're in that game. We can bounce back. We've done that several times in the last little while. Our frustration took over. And that's really what's happening, is you can see these guys playing with frustration. Corey Crawford firing the puck down the net. I don't know if it was on TV or not, but you could see him on the puck after the whistle and just fired it down the other side of the ice. And so Crawford's frustrated. The players are frustrated. The defensemen are frustrated. They're not playing well, and we're getting down to that crunch time at the end of the season where there's only a few more weeks left. This is the time when you need to be fine-tuning things, not trying to figure out a solution. I'm not a doomsday guy, because I still think the Blackhawks can go in there and handle the St. Louis Blues in the first round of the playoffs. It look like they're going to play, but they need to be able to go in there and dominate that first series in order to have the energy and momentum to go and play a second round series against a much tougher matchup. And so they've got to get some of these things ironed out, and hopefully that's Carcillo coming in there and giving him a spark. Hopefully it's Van Riemsdyk coming back and being able to play a little bit before the end of the season. But whatever it is hopefully maybe it's Darling not being in the locker room to feel these frustrations and coming in and just playing well at goal, and that lighting up the rest of the team. We'll see, but it's not doom and gloom right now, because they're still way too talented of a team, and they're still in a really good position. with 22 games left, the Blackhawks are still 4 points ahead of Vancouver, and they're still solidly in that position where they're going to play St. Louis in the first round. So it's nuts. Even after this bad, rough stretch, they're still in the exact same spot they were several weeks ago when they were playing well. So I'm not too worried about it. It's just when you get to that next round of matchups, whether you play Anaheim or Nashville or Vancouver, you're going to have a much tougher matchup, and you want to kind of get things righted. You want to go in there and beat St. Louis pretty handedly and be able to have the rest and the momentum going into that next series. That's about it for the Blackhawks right now. We'll do a little bit about the Bulls here. Switching gears. Bulls are really an enigma. I mean, I can't figure this team out. You've one game they'll go in and beat Golden State in Golden State. Then they'll beat Cleveland to close out the All-Star right before the All-Star break. Then they turn around after the All-Star break and they lose to Detroit. Really? Detroit? If you're a championship caliber team, you just can't keep losing to teams like Detroit. You can't have that. I mean, granted, Detroit's not Philadelphia or some of these other just god-awful teams, but they're not a good team by any stretch. You should be going in there and imposing your will on teams like that. So you just can't keep playing down to your competition. It's just not going to work. It's not going to work if you're serious about a championship run. And at the beginning of the season, this was a wide open conference where any number of 5 teams could have come out of it. And it's starting to shape up still technically any of these teams could, but it's starting to shape up that where the cream of the crop is separating itself in this conference, and the Bulls are not in that position. The one good thing we could talk about is at least the starting 5 is back in action, and that's been huge for the Bulls, is having all 5 of the starters in play. You'd expect the Bulls to come out and play like they did against Phoenix when they have their starting 5. Like, they come out and they beat Phoenix pretty handedly and pick up some steam and try to control that 3rd spot in the conference. Because when this team is clicking, it doesn't really matter if they're home or the road. They can beat you. When the Bulls are clicking and you've got Rose playing like almost at MVP level, you got Jimmy Butler playing at a high level, and you've got these other guys just being great complementary roles, is you can go in there and steamroll. There's no juggernaut team like the Miami Heat of the last few years or San Antonio of the last few years. There's no juggernaut team. This Bulls team can go in there and beat anybody, home or road. They showed that against Golden State. They can absolutely beat you. But with these nagging injuries and inconsistent play, they need all the help they can get to win that. So while if this team is healthy, home court advantage is not going to be that important. With the way that things have been going this season, with injuries and inconsistent play of Derrick Rose and older players and needing some more rest and needing an extra boost, I think having this 3rd spot or even moving up to the 2nd spot is going to be really crucial for the Bulls to make a run. And they've got Cleveland hot on their trail to overtake them for that 3rd spot. And that's things they have to do. You have Derrick Rose coming out of the All-Star break, not playing well, and then missing practice, which we don't know what exactly happened in that situation. The team's trying to downplay it, which means that there's probably something more to it. But if he misses practice and he's playing well, I'm not so concerned. But if he misses practice and it wasn't announced beforehand and he's playing not so well, then you have to really consider something. I mean, that's bad news. You can't have that. So the Bulls are just coming off the All-Star break, and when Gary was on last time, we talked a little bit, and he thinks I'm being doom and gloom about this, and he's much more optimistic. But I think talent-wise, this team can play with anybody, but it's being able to get that, and that means you need consistent play on offense and defense, which is something they haven't been able to do. You need Derrick Rose to at least look like a shell of his former self on every night. Even on bad shooting nights, he needs to be able to distribute the ball and get other people going. You need Joakim Noah to actually start rebounding better. You got to have these rebounds. You can't give up these offensive boards all the time. That's killing them. With these second chance shots, you need to start opening up on the 3-point and spreading out that defense, because you can't settle for jump shots, and you got to clear that lane for penetration to open up 3-pointers, or have 3-pointers open up the middle of the lane. One has to open up for the other one. And that's something the Bulls need to do, and Thibodeau needs to start resting some guys, because they've got to open up this bench and go a little deeper on it, because veteran guys need a little bit more time on the bench and not playing so much, because you can't have hurt, nagging injury Joakim Noah playing so many minutes. You can't have old Paul Gasol playing so many minutes. You can't have bum wheel Derrick Rose playing a lot of minutes. You need to utilize these guys better, and if that means that these guys got to start taking themselves out of games, so be it. Because Thibodeau is just not handling that well, and now they got Dunleavy back in the roster. Hopefully, they can start maneuvering back to being able to play at least semi better defense, which means Dunleavy being able to maintain his responsibility, the defensive side, and everybody else not having to shift over because of somebody's lack of coverage on their player or giving up their defensive position. Because that's what happens with this team is one guy blows his assignment, and somebody else has to shift over to help him, which leaves another hole. And eventually, guys shifting over somebody's going to be open because somebody blew an assignment. And that thing is, when the Bulls, the last few years, when they've been able to be good by being good defensively, is Thibodeau put the best defenders out there because nobody could score. I mean, it was a terrible scoring team. So he just put his best defenders out there, and there was no consistent blown assignments. But now you've got a team that can actually put some points on the board. They can drop 115 on you on a given night. But the trade-off is that you don't have the defensive prowess of these guys, and you've got guys that are blowing assignments, and that's got to be pulling, making Thibodeau pull every last bit of hair he has out of his head. So this is something that we're just going to keep watching. I mean, the Bulls got some games coming up here. It's still plenty of time before the playoffs start to start righting the ship and getting everybody back to the playing together. I mean, Dunleavy was out for a long while, so it'll be nice to have the time to kind of get used to playing with him again, and hopefully that starts to see many more games like the Phoenix Suns game rather than the Detroit game. And then finally, let's talk about Chicago Bears. This week, every week, if you're somebody that listens to the show regularly, every week we cover one position in the NFL draft and go through 10 to 15 guys in the draft, and really break them down. I look at a lot of game film. I don't just watch highlights. I go and watch several games of each player and watch every single snap that they're involved in, whether that's good, bad, or ugly. Last week was cornerbacks. This week is wide receivers, and next week is linebackers. And linebacker is going to be a good one. I'm going to have to really sit down and watch a lot of film, because I'm going to be doing both the traditional linebackers and the 3-4 outside linebackers. Because as you may or may not know, is the Bears made it official that they are going to be switching to a base 3-4 defense this year, which is going to be the first time ever for the Chicago Bears. And linebacker is a huge need for this team, both an outside linebacker in a 3-4 and your traditional linebackers. And depending on what happens with Brandon Marshall in this offseason, his wide receiver could be another huge area of need. So this week we'll be covering the wide receivers, and next week the linebackers. And as always, if you're listening to this and there's a guy that I didn't cover that you're really interested in, let me know. So go check out swerskisports.com. It has all of our contact information. You can hit us up on Twitter at Swerski Sports or Facebook.com/Swerski Sports. Any of those ways, just get in touch with us and let us know who the player is. I'll do my best to take a look at them. There's some guys I just can't find any footage of. I don't really want to look at just highlights because everybody looks good in highlights. I want to see what the good, the bad, and the ugly of every player is. And no player is perfect. Every player has flaws, and I want to be able to find what those flaws are. That's why I like watching the entire game film, every snap, especially with wide receivers. I want to see what they're doing when the ball's not going to them. What are they doing on running plays? What are they doing when the play's going the opposite way? But we'll get to that in a few minutes. With the switch to the 3-4 base defense is have to start asking yourself is what happens to these guys that don't translate well from a 4-3 to 3-4? Personally, I don't have anything to back this up. I don't think they're going to play they made it clear that they're playing a base 3-4. But I have a feeling that they are going to do a lot of hybrid stuff and a lot of switching back to 4-3 because most of their personnel is geared for a 4-3 defense. And some of you may know this completely and really well, and some of you may not. So I'm going to kind of step back from this is the way the Bears have been playing under the Lovey system and a little bit under Mel Tucker is they've been playing one gap defense. Especially under Lovey's system is what you have. I can't even discuss Mel Tucker because his defense was I don't even know. It was a hodgepodge and it wasn't very good. And so let's talk about what they've done under the Lovey Smith system is they played a one gap defense. So what happens is as a defensive lineman, you are responsible for one gap. And you want that defensive tackle to shoot the gap to either break up the run or disrupt the pass. But whatever, you are responsible for that one gap. And whenever there's a big play and you're gashed, it's one person's responsibility. They didn't maintain their gap control. But the way this 3-4 works is you have 3 down linemen. So you have your nose tackle and you have 2 defensive ends, and then you have an outside linebacker who rushes from a stand-up position, so from a 2-point position, doesn't have his hand in the ground. And each person has a different type of responsibility, so everyone's got a 2-gap responsibility. Tackle is, see, a big space eater, a guy like Vince Wilfork or Haloti Ngata, where you just clog up the middle. You take up both sides of the center. You have the center guard gap on both sides. And anytime a run play tries to go through there, you just bottle that up. There's nowhere for them to go. And it's the same with the other positions. Instead of having traditional defensive ends, your defensive ends are more run stoppers than pass rushers. Most of your pressure is going to come from your outside linebacker and your one defensive end position, the opposite side of the defensive lineman. So you're basically trying to create mismatches and confusion from the offensive line because that outside linebacker can come from the middle, either spot. You don't know where they're going to come from, and they're going to have to call out and really understand their responsibilities to be able to stop the disruption. That's the theory. Anyways, what you have with the Chicago Bears is several 4-3 defensive ends, one being Jared Allen, your best defensive end from last year, maybe Willie Young. And those two are 4-3 defensive ends, and they've been quite successful in there. So what do you do with them? We've already had We've already had Jared Allen in Minnesota when there was talks of them switching to a 3-4, saying that they should have enough respect for him to know that he's not going to finish his career as an outside linebacker and learn a new position, and that they should let him go. What's he going to do here? There's two schools of thought. One, well, I guess three schools of thought. One, they get rid of him, which is going to be difficult because you're going to have to trade him because he's going to be a big cap hit for you for this year. Two is, what I think might happen is you have, even though you have a base 3-4 defense, you're going to play a lot of a 4-3 defense. And you're going to put Jared Allen in and not play him as many snaps. You're going to play him in there when you've got the 4-3 going. Then the third thing is he's just going to suck it up and learn to drop back into coverage a little bit and play that outside linebacker position. And the thing with that is there has been some history of success when this happens. When Chuck Pagano took over the Indianapolis Colts in 2012, he switched from a long-standing 4-3 defense with ends Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis taking their hands off the ground and moving them to outside linebackers. In that same year, Robert Mathis was voted the Pro Bowl 2012 and 2013, was the AFC Defensive Player in the Year in 2013 at age 31. Dwight Freeney was the starting outside linebacker with San Diego the past 2 seasons after leaving the Colts. So there is, if you play a good defense, these guys could have a lot of success. And Jared Allen's a guy that wants to win, wants to compete, and if you put him in a position where he can do that, then really he's not going to care. He's winning. I mean, look at Julius Peppers. He made that switch from a 4-3 defensive end, and he's a prototypical 4-3 defensive end. They moved him to an outside linebacker in Green Bay, and he had a lot more success this year than he had the past 2 years with the Bears. Then, looking at a lot of the Bears mock drafts, is a lot of people have the Bears at the 7th position, drafting Danny Shelton out of Washington as a big nose tackle to be that 3-4 anchor on the defensive line. I just think that's really silly. There's nobody that's worth that number 7 position to draft at nose tackle. I just think anybody that thinks that there's a worthy position is being silly. And these are top rated guys that are doing this, and it boggles my mind because this is the number 7 position we're talking about. Sure, you need a really great space eater or nose tackle in a 3-4 defense if you want to have some success. But way more important than that is you need an elite pass rusher to be outside linebacker. At that number 7 position, you need to take your critical position, which is the outside pass rusher. The Bears got 10 sacks out of Willie Young playing as a traditional hands in the ground 4-3 guy, but he's facing a long rehab because he tore his Achilles in one of the last games of the season. Maybe it was the last game. Looking at Ryan Pace, he's been unequivocal as number 1 criteria he and the Bears want is somebody that can rush the passer. He's quoted as saying, "Pass rush is the first thing that comes to mind. Edge speed, the ability to hit the quarterback, and then also the ability to set the edge and get off a block. But pass rush is the number 1 priority." After hearing this, after understanding what the Bears have and what a 3-4 needs, it blows my mind that anybody thinks that the Bears would waste the 7th pick on a nose tackle. And yeah, they would be wasting a pick at number 7 because you do have a couple of guys who could play that position of the nose tackle. You've got Jay Ratliff, who's done it in Dallas. He's done it. Ego Ferguson is big enough guy to do it too. So you've got guys that could do it, where you can try later on for a guy, because finding an elite defensive nose tackle isn't always about picking the highest guy. Sometimes it's developing a guy. Some of the best big road grader defensive linemen that the Bears have ever had, like Teddy Washington, they're not top 10 picks. So what the Bears need is to be able to get a pass rusher, and that's where guys, you don't find a lot of guys later on in the draft. You find guys early on. And at the number 7 position, you should be able to get one of the top 3. Fowler from Florida, Gregory from Nebraska, or Shane Ray from Mizzou. Any one of those guys would be phenomenal for you because they are guys that can get to the quarterback. So I don't understand why you'd waste the number 7 pick by getting a big fat road grader. So that brings us to what you're probably tuning in for, if I'm being perfectly honest, is we're going to break down the wide receivers in this draft. Let's start with probably the one you're interested in hearing about, Amari Cooper. He's probably the most celebrated of the wide receivers, and you've heard the most about him, I'm guessing. Amari Cooper, 6'1", 211 pounds, out of Alabama. Pros: he's a solid all-around wide receiver, willing to block, decent blocker, actually pretty decent, nice hands, played in a pro-style offense. He had great stats in college, so great college stats. He's physical enough. The cons: he's a little bit of a sloppy route runner, not huge size, not blazing speed either. All around, he's probably the best wide receiver in the draft, just because of question marks on other people. Does that mean he's going to turn out the best? Probably not, but he's a safe pick. He's not a sexy pick. He's a safe pick. He's safe and he's steady. He may not be a superstar, but he's definitely not going to be a bust. So that's what you could say about Amari Cooper. Then there's Kevin White, 6'3", 215 pounds, out of West Virginia. Decent speed, good height at 6'3". He wins jump balls. He goes up there and wins them. He's a willing and a decent blocker. The cons: he relies a lot on the yards after the catch for his big plays, and I don't know if he's going to get all those yards in the NFL. He had some big drops in 2014. Case in point, a drop touchdown pass against Alabama. He's going to need to continue to improve as a blocker. He might be a decent blocker, but come NFL, he's going to have to be much better. Physically, he has all the tools to be an NFL wide receiver, but you need to see if he can handle the mental part of learning a playbook. He spent 2 years at a junior college because he couldn't qualify academically for the NCAA. And we all know how low the standards are to get into an NCAA Division I school for football, if you're not going to Stanford or some other programs that have higher standards. But West Virginia, you should be able to get in fairly easily academically, and he couldn't do it. So that's going to question how many of these complex systems that he can learn the playbook on. Also at the combine, he ran a 4.35 40, but his on-the-field speed doesn't seem to be as fast as that in his Under Armour wear. He may have moved with that speed because teams like the Oakland Raiders and some other teams just really latch on to the athletic ability, and he may have moved up into the number 1 wide receiver spot, depending on what team is going to be going for wide receiver first. He's a little bit of a boomer bust pick, I think, because he has a lot of the physical tools. Then there's Devontae Parker, 6'3", 209 pounds, out of Louisville. Pros: he elevates to the ball as good as anybody, so when there's a high ball, he just times that perfectly. He's a bigger receiver at 6'3". He's got good hands. He had good production against corners that are going to be first and second round corners in the NFL draft. The cons: he's got a thin frame, so 6'3", 209. He's going to need to get bigger and stronger. He doesn't have an elite speed. He got caught from behind way too much. If he had 4.35 speed, his numbers would have been gaudy at Louisville, because there was times where he just got behind the defense and he got caught from behind, and he would have had more yards, more touchdowns. He two-hand shoves corners too much, and that's going to get called in the NFL. He didn't get that called in college, but it's going to be called in the NFL because when it's close, he just two-hand shoves the cornerback to create separation. And he needs to work on his route running a little bit because he's kind of sloppy. Parker was a huge playmaker for Louisville. If he had barn burner speed, you'd be seeing his name like along in the Heisman voting. He just got caught from behind way too much. Then there's Dorial Green-Beckham, 6'5", 237 pounds out of Oklahoma and Missouri. Sorry, he played for Missouri as well. Pros, he has size, speed, strength. He's an athletic freak of nature. He has long legs that can stride effortlessly. If you've ever watched Usain Bolt run, where it just doesn't look like he's even breaking a sweat, but he's breaking land speed records for human beings, that's Dorial Green-Beckham. He doesn't look like he's going that fast, but he is just gently running away from the pack. He can change directions and speeds with ease. He can go up high and take balls away that shouldn't be caught. Runs great routes when he wants to. He is a cornerback nightmare. Cons. He got dismissed from Missouri for domestic abuse issues, which could linger on in the NFL with the strict new Ray Rice rules. So we need to see how that's going to go. So that could be an NFL strike against him already. He can be lazy in his route running. When he wants to, he runs great routes, but he doesn't always want to run them. He can also be lazy in pass catches. He lets the ball go into his body too much. And he's not a fan of blocking. You're not really going to get a blocker out of him. If he works hard and wants to, he could be Megatron. He's an absolute freak, but he has questionable character, and NFL teams are going to look really hard at him because he is a high-risk, high-reward guy. You don't know if he's going to do something stupid and get suspended, or become lazy and not want to produce on the field, or he could just wake up one day and say, listen, I got my dream. I'm in the NFL. I want to keep it and be the next Megatron or Des Bryant. He's got all the talent in the world. And it just, you got to ask yourself, do you have the locker room and the head coach and the structural organization for your team that can maintain this guy? If he for some reason drops all the way down to New England, watch them snap him up, and him and Tom Brady just combined for record after record. Then there's Jalen Strong, 6'2", 217 out of Arizona State. Pros, he's got better than average height at 6'2". He runs really good routes, fairly physical, great competitor, willing blocker. Cons, he's just got adequate speed. He's not that quick at all. He takes a while to get to his top end speed. Not always willing to extend his arm to get a ball. So what I mean by that is, if there's a high ball, is he going to jump up and extend his arms to get it? No, he'll put his arms just over the top of his helmet, so he's got his arms in to protect him. Or if a play is a little bit outside of his catch radius, does he reach his arms out to catch it? No, he kind of keeps his elbows in order to protect himself. And that just shows me he's a little bit scared of blindside hits, which I guess I would be too, but if you're going to be a wide receiver in the NFL, you can't be doing that. And he did that a little too much for my taste. He doesn't always play as tall as he is, and he's not as physical as he'll need to be in the NFL. And don't get me wrong, I like Jalen Strong, but I don't love Jalen Strong. He isn't bad at anything, but he doesn't really excel at anything either. Kind of like Amari Cooper. Jalen Strong is going to have a ceiling that's lower than a lot of these guys that are coming in the draft this year at wide receiver, but he's also going to have a floor that's much higher. So he's going to be a safer pick. He's not going to have the low of lows, I think, as some of these other guys can, but he's also not going to reach for the stars like a Dorial Green-Beckham could. Then there's Sammy Coates, 6'1", 212 out of Auburn. He is muscular and strong. He's got good football speed. He won't get beat up at the line of scrimmage. He can hand fight and be physical with the best of them in college. Some of the cons, he doesn't come back well for the ball. Really only ran a couple of different routes while he was at Auburn. he kept running the same routes over and over, and I don't know if that was just how their offense runs or if he couldn't grasp the offense. And he could explode off the ball better. So when the ball is snapped, he doesn't explode out of his from the hips out. He's a little bit slow off the ball. He's a bit of an enigma. He has all the tools to be like an Odell Beckham, but he's going to need a veteran receiver to take him under his wing. He has exceptional hands when he's concentrating, but when you watch him, you can totally tell that he's checked out mentally out of some games because he just drops balls that hit him right in the hands. But I think he's really going to need a veteran presence like Brandon Marshall or Steve Smith to take him under their wing and sort of show him the ropes and what he needs to do to be an NFL caliber wide receiver. Then there's Devin Funchess, 6'5", 232 out of Michigan. Pros: he is tall, he is muscular, he's big, he's pretty strong, he attacks the ball, he catches it away from his body with his hands, he creates a huge catch radius. So by catch radius, I mean an area around him where you can throw the ball and he's still going to catch it. So he can reach out, he can reach up, he can reach down. And when you're a 6'5" guy, that creates a big catch radius. He's got decent speed for his size. He's going to be a matchup problem because he's too fast for linebackers to cover him, and he's too big for defensive backs to cover. Cons: his blocking technique is not very good at all. He lacks focus sometimes. He doesn't always play as big as he is, and he's going to need to be stronger if he's to play. If he's going to be playing as a tight end, and he's likely going to be a pass-catching tight end in the NFL, kind of like a Jimmy Graham or a Rob Gronkowski. I think that's where his bread and butter is going to be. But he isn't a dynamic enough wide receiver to be a top-end wide receiver in this league. But as a tight end, he could be special. Watch out for Devin Funchess. Then there's Devin Smith, 6', 196 out of Ohio State. Pros: he's got a quick stride that lets him get to his top speed pretty quickly, and he's shown to make a lot of spectacular catches. He's best at getting behind the defense for big plays, and he's made some really special over-the-shoulder catches that are pretty phenomenal. Cons: he's definitely going to need to get stronger. Not sure, though, that his frame can really hold much more muscle, just his size and build, but he's going to have to get stronger if he's going to be an NFL wide receiver. He's meh on size, 6 foot. Didn't show a ton of versatility in his route running. But he's an interesting prospect because he comes from Ohio State, so he's likely very well coached. But he didn't really get a chance to showcase his full repertoire. Great special teamer that's going to allow him to stick in the league long enough to be able to get a shot at wide receiver. So that's going to be the thing is he may not be a superstar right off the bat, but he's going to be one of those guys that plays special teams, and then finally gets a shot at wide receiver and utilizes all that time in practice to finally showcase what he has. And that's what Devin Smith could do. Then there's Nelson Aguilar, 6', 198 out of USC. He's got a lean, athletic frame with good lateral agility to elude, and he's got sudden acceleration. He shows good quickness and balance as a route runner, and is asked to run a variety of routes in USC's pro-style offense. He makes sharp cuts in route running, and he's going to get yards after the catch. He's really dynamic when he's got space. Cons: his frame's not likely going to let him get over 200 pounds. He's about where he's going to be. But he's going to need to get stronger and tougher to play in the NFL. He had way too many double catches where the ball hit him in the hands, kind of bounced out, and he had to catch it again. And in the NFL, you don't really get a lot of chance to do that because you're getting hit. And he's not going to get very many yards after contact. So, like I said, he could get a lot of yards after the catch, but he needs space because once somebody puts a hand on him, he's going down. But he's an absolutely electric kick and punt returner, and he's dynamic when he's got open space. Really athletic. He's a bit of a Devin Hester-ish, where he's great in space but poor in tight coverage. Nelson Aguilar is going to be a really interesting prospect, and I'm really curious of who's going to take a flyer on him because I don't know how great he's going to be as a wide receiver, but as a kick returner, he's got a ton of potential. Then there's Rashad Green, 5'11", 182 out of Florida State. Pros, he's a balanced athlete with natural body control and gliding speed. Very good foot quickness at the line of scrimmage, and goes into his breaks, he breaks into his release and creates separation. He's got a sharp plant foot to quickly change directions in his routes, and he shows the quarterback his numbers really well, so that gives him a good target to throw to. He's played the X, Y, and Z positions. He's good at patient route running, has punt return experience, is a hard worker on the field, really humble and soft-spoken. Cons, he's not a great blocker. He tries, but he's not a great blocker. He's a bit of a string bean, 5'11", 182. He's not going to win a ton of 50-50 battles. He's going to need to get a lot stronger, and he lacks elite speed. So his ability to stay in this league will be because he's a really hard worker, and he's a good teammate, and he's going to bail out quarterbacks on broken plays and make great third down catches. And he's got the versatility to play all three wide receiver spots and special teams. He's not going to be an elite guy. He's not going to be a Pro Bowler. But he could be a guy that you, on a good team, is that third wide receiver that hometown fans love and the rest of the league goes, who the hell is that guy that's making that great catch? Rashad Green could be a really nice complement to a good offense. But if he has to be the featured focal point of an NFL offense, your team's probably in trouble. And then the last guy I'm gonna talk about is Jamison Crowder, 5'8", 182 or 185 out of Duke. Pros, he's one of the best statistical wide receivers in ACC history. Runs great routes, plays really physical for his size at 5'8", 185. He's a willing run blocker. He can hand fight really well at the line of scrimmage, and when he goes deep on passes, he can really hand fight with the best of them. He uses cornerbacks that are playing physical against him to his advantage. So if you watch, he lets them create contact, and when the referees see that, they're either going to call the flag or they're going to let him play physical out, and he completely uses that to their advantage, and he plays physical right back and pushes off and creates that separation. So if you watch him play, there's bigger cornerbacks that are right on top of him, and he's only 5'8", and at the last second, he's being overshadowed, and he creates the separation with a little bit of a step and a little bit of a shove, and he's making these plays. But because the cornerback was being much more physical first, they're not going to throw that offensive pass interference call. It was really great to watch. He's also got really good intangibles. The cons on Jamison Crowder, he's small. He's 5'8", 185. He doesn't go up high for jump balls either, because he's 5'8", 185. I don't have a lot of cons on Crowder. If he was 6'3", he'd be the number one wide receiver in this draft, I think. He reminds me a lot of Steve Smith. You'll wonder how a wide receiver so small can beat you so bad. He's just mentally and physically tough and talented guy. I love watching Jamison Crowder play, and if the Bears are able to get him later in the draft, I would be ecstatic, because I think he is just a tough wide receiver that's gonna find a place in this league and show people what they can do, like Steve Smith did. So that's going to be it for coverage on the wide receivers. If there's any guys I didn't cover that you think I should, please feel free to get in touch at swerskisports.com, Twitter at swerskisports, facebook.com/swerskisports. I'm more than willing to go back and look at any guys that you have questions about. And next week is going to be the linebackers, which is going to be interesting because the Bears have a huge need at linebacker. So I'm going to look at guys that I think the Bears are probably going to need. And I guess that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the show. So thanks for listening, and until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like... Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down